Stumbling down the road with Bridget Lynn Dolgoff as she carries stones, digs holes, and wheels her shovels on her way. This road is the real path. It is never easy and never clear, but always entertaining. This journey has not been a seated event, as Bridget walks, runs, stumbles, carries, digs, drags, laughs, fights, sings, prays, dances, kicks, screams, and oftentimes falls.
Hey everybody, it's Carrying Stones Digging Holes radio show, and I'm your host, Bridget Lynn Dolgoff, for the next 2 hours. Hey, you can go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you can look at the support me link, or support us, not the support me link, but the support us link on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you can find ways to support us. So, we have advertising on the website. We have all kinds of different things going on. And we're going to have new things in the future. So, Teresa's ringing.
I don't know why my phone is doing that. This stuff is crazy.
I know. Okay, so anyway.
Let me turn this phone off. My goodness. Sorry, apologize.
Anyway, you could also go to Freedom or Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you can look under the schedule, click on Studio A, scroll down, see the bee on the flower, click on that picture, and there's a back page about my show and contact links and blah, 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 blah. If you want to get a hold of me, you can go there. Anyway, my show is, I have the Saturday edition, which is today, and I have Wednesday edition. Wednesday is also on Studio A, and you can find that at noon Eastern Standard Time to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then, of course, today is Saturday, and we're at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 3 p.m. So anyway, now you get to, have a smooth sailing ride with me today for 2 hours. All right, so I was worried that Teresa wasn't going to show up again, but at the last minute.
Sorry. I showed up in human form today. I can use my voice today. I stay out there in the universe. Can you hear me? Uh-oh. What happened?
So today we have on Teresa J. Morris, or TJ Morris, and her and Janet are going to be doing a collaborative show on Thursdays, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm excited.
What studio are you going to be in?
We're going Studio B 4 to 6. We're going to catch the drive-by traffic, so hopefully people will drive by or be out there listening at 4 to 6. Hopefully we can come up with some cool stuff because, life is all about the journey, not the destination. So we signed up for 4 to 6. Now that is
the Portal Stargate, right? Portal Stargate.
Portal Stargate. Yeah, I came up with that name because we've been doing portals, and I love to think about those things that we do, like time travel and other dimensions and other worlds. You know me, I'm like you. You make me feel good. Bridget, you were one of the best gifts that Ahmad gave me in my reality. Because you weren't in. Seriously, it was like Christmas when he brought you to me.
Because I'm a potluck.
You're a lot like me. You're just a little eclectic. You know what I mean? You're very eclectic. So you're one of those. I don't know. You're just you're a star child. You've got your act together. I'll try not to CUSS today. But I like interesting people. But your energy, your vibe, is what changed me. I was able to accept who I was. See, I've been in a lot of denial of my inner strength of who
Really?
I've been. Yes, I've been.
No, I don't believe that.
Yeah, I'm a real outgoing personality, it seems, but I'm an introvert. I'm a disgruntled hermit inside because I've always been a mystic. I was one of the oracles of Atlantis and have memories of Mu and all that stuff. So I can't talk about who I really am. I flew around being Miss Green Tara and White Tara and all that in past lives, at least in my head. All these stories are going on in my head of all these reincarnations I've had here on this planet. So I'm a really interesting, strange person inside my head. I just can't be it on the outside.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with the training. I mean, when I was growing up, there was always this over sense of, my family having abilities and stuff, but always us keeping it low on the radar, and acting normal. And trying to figure out how to act normal in this world I spent so much time doing it. I'm a human, I'm going to walk around and this is how we walk and these are the kind of clothes we wear and these are the kind of things we do. And I remember, just what happened is that I never would talk about a lot of stuff. It was always kept under. And then I think doing TV and radio has slowly helped me. And one of the things that I realized that kind of in the last couple of years about doing radio is that if I really want to reach people, I have to be kind of more authentic, which means I have to tell people the truth. And what is the truth? And what am I hiding and what am I concealing? I mean, there are some things that I probably, may in the future talk on radio about and some things I don't. But for the most part, I think people should really know at this point in time that people are living differently. Some people live kind of in a different scape. And I think to express that, can help other people to connect, because there are probably a lot of other people out there who are like, stuck themselves under a rock or buried themselves in some kind of hole so that they don't talk about the things that they're experiencing.
Well, that's what you brought to me, because whatever that vibration or resonance that you're doing, that megahertz, 432, 568, whatever you're doing I needed that. So you were a healer for me, a shamanic, even though we're not in the same reality within 10 feet around us, which is, is what I used to teach in the 80s, but is the fact that whatever we do in radio, we can make people feel good or bad. We can actually heal them and help them recognize that they're not alone in the universe. And that's what Ahmad was always teaching me, was we were kindred spirits and we're about bringing people together and connecting the dots. So, he inspired me, but you inspired me. And it's just absolutely amazing how each person is their own truth, because each of us is so uniquely different. And that's the way, apparently, the source God, Godmother, the beginning was created so it could express itself, order and chaos. Or I don't know if order was first and then chaos, but I know there was billions of years before the Big Bang for this universe. And so I like to talk physics, but I wrote a book called Knowing Cosmology, just as a beginning, so people could understand how many different parts of cosmology there really is. And that's, each of us is so unique. I find it odd that we can bring all these little tiny pieces of ourselves and make it into a human form, through the birth canal, and be a human form walking and talking around, and inside it grows. The energy, the soul of what we are grows and learns on a regular basis, continually changing, not to mention how much we shed our reality, our skin and our cells off of us. But to me, that's absolutely amazing if you think about it. And then how much are we really part of that? Right? I mean, it's on automatic pilot. You don't have to think about keeping your arm on or your leg on or your eyeballs falling out of your orbit.
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, but you do have to take care of your biosuit that you're in. You know, it's like a car. It does need, the proper oil and fuel, and it does need, a good environment as well to keep it thriving. Otherwise, it dies sooner than we want it to die, right?
I would imagine that some people believe that since we are uh, well, those that do believe that they're forever a soul or a reincarnated of themselves or whatever. Some believe they're uniquely different, but they know they're different, but they don't understand why they can't find their tribe or their village, or maybe they had a really bad childhood around humans that weren't. Maybe they were possessed or something. I don't know. You never know what family you're born into, but I'm doing my best. You have given me the hope that I've been looking for, that other part. Yeah, I know you're younger than me, and I know that I wish my children were more open-minded. I just wish that carrying stones and digging holes. What is that about, Bridget? Just tell me, because I don't understand that, and I don't understand my children. I don't. What is that? What does that
carrying
mean?
Stones and digging holes. So originally, I had a co-host, but she ended up getting herself fired. She went bat crap kooky doo on me, and that was it. I was like, you know what? I can't ever have you on the radio with me and something triggers you and you just totally lose it,
Oh.
And so what it was originally is she always talked about how she was always digging holes because she was doing a lot of permaculture work. And I carry a lot of stones because there's a lot of rocks here when I'm building farm projects, but it reminds me of chopping wood and carrying water, digging holes and carrying stones, preparing the soil. But she was also Native. She was Cherokee, half Cherokee. And so I've done a lot of work with Native people in ceremonies. So, digging holes and carrying stones has to also do not only with the land and growing things and caring for the land, but also the day-by-day processes. But it also is about the ceremonies, digging the holes for the ceremonies, and carrying the stones for the ceremonies, and all these different kinds of things. So it had kind of a 3-level understanding: ceremonial work, our day-to-day processes of carrying wood and chopping water and staying focused in the now, and
carrying
then also
wood and chopping water.
carrying water and chopping wood.
Okay.
That's like a statement that people will say, like when you don't know what else to do, carry water and chop wood,
Really? No, I've never heard that. Is that something? Is that a colloquialism for Reno area?
No, I think it's just kind of a spiritual kind of a thing, that people will say, if you don't really know what else to do and you're scattered, then just focus in the now on the day-to-day events. And, in the past, the day-to-day events would be you have to go get the water and you have to go chop the wood. So start there, start there.
Oh, it's a philosophy.
Yeah, it's like a philosophy. So, yeah, so that's kind of like what carrying stones and digging holes is about. And I just, kept it. And so that's kind of explains it in a way.
Well, it's a cool name for a show. I just didn't understand it, but you don't have to understand everything. That's what I like about you. People that I didn't understand in school, elementary school, everyone's, I guess, at least around here where I live, went to school. So I didn't even know what homeschooling was until later on in life. Who is Karen Pozeski? It keeps coming up on my radio. And how did you put the chat room on here? Because somehow that was what was ringing on my phone after I was already tuned in on my computer. I don't understand a lot of this stuff, Bridget, physically, but there's people talking, and the little black box on the bottom right screen will show up. She's in the Revolution Radio chat room. How do you do that? How can we be here? It said that Bridget connected the chat room. You know how to do that on your phones or something? Is that what you did? You make it a group? What's going on? Can you hear me?
Yeah, while we're on, we're on air live, right?
Uh-huh.
But all the other stuff is going on in your Skype, right? So if people want to message you that they can message you. Our host chat is going off while you're on air. So all those things are going off on the side. So those are on your Skype. Like right now, I don't really have anything going on over here. I mean, I could go down to the chat, and it looks like there's a lot of people chatting. And I do have a couple messages from friends of mine on Skype, but you just kind of have to ignore that. That stuff while you're on, because it's not on with us.
Okay. I should
Skype.
Okay, well, this, folks, I haven't been on a radio show in a while on Skype with anybody, and I have brand new equipment that is much more updated because it's brand new, and it came with a lot of bells and whistles that I'm not accustomed to, so forgive my ignorance with Revolution Radio, please, or anybody else out there listening. So, what are we supposed to...
let's go back and talk about something.
Okay.
One of the things that I learned... when I was young, for some reason, because Nevada has a special law that was introduced in 1919 by the Mormons, and it's based on frontier medicine. So Nevada has always kind of been, we'll call it legally, kind of an alternative therapy state. So there have been a lot of people here that have been like super out of the box. But I went to this...
I was a Mormon once.
I had a whole bunch of things going on when I was like around, 20. And I had some clients that were attorneys, and they used this lady who did sound and handwriting analysis.
Wow.
And what they would do is every time they'd hire somebody, they'd have them write an essay, a freehand essay, and then they would take that essay to the handwriting analysis lady, and they could find out if they were a liar, if they were a thief, any of these kinds of traits, and then they wouldn't hire them. If the handwriting analysis came back on the employment essay as negative, then they didn't hire them for the law firm. And so so my attorney client said, hey, you should go check out this lady. She can kind of help you pull some of your, the physical reality together, because it helps you to pull yourself together. So, I made an appointment with her, and I took in a handwriting sample analysis, and, she looked at your signature and, like everything. And she said, you have, she said, you see how your first and middle name are signed, and then there's a gap, and then there's this last name. And she said, so you don't know who you are, you don't know who you are or where you fit in the world. And so I started going through, seeing her like once a week and working on these different kinds of things to kind of pull me together as a whole kind of being, just with my writing and everything else. And then we started working on talking. And because I used to talk high, my voice used to be a lot higher because I was mental, because I was stressed out, and I was trying to figure out how to deal with this world. And, I had a private practice even back then, and just trying to, figure it all out and where I fit into it, because I was so different, for the first 20 years of my life, that I didn't even know how to really navigate this world, really. And a lot of it was messed up inside and disconnected. And so then we started working on the voice thing. And what she taught me was that when you tell the truth, when you're telling the truth, what happens is that your voice aligns with your heart. And so your voice will actually drop. Your heart, in order to run good in this world, in this body, it has to have a relationship to the earth, because the same Schumann frequency that the earth is the same frequency your heart needs in order to have the perfect rhythm. So she started giving me like ideas, and this is like 30 years ago. So she started giving me ideas about, I was out in nature a lot anyway, constant, but she'd give me ideas on like walking barefoot, and also connecting my voice to the earth. and talking out loud, while I'm barefoot, and getting into that heart and telling the truth. And so what happens is that your voice, when you're telling the truth, right, and you are putting out a good frequency, that means that your voice is connected to your heart is connected to the earth, and you're putting out a frequency through your voice, which is the Schumann earth resonance frequency. Now, if you're lying, or you're not sure about who you are, or you have blocks in communicating who you are, then people become uncomfortable with you because they're picking up a frequency that is fragmented from you, which makes them nervous, can cause them to be irritable, can cause them to be stressed out. So even if you were talking to somebody in a mad way, like you're mad, but you have your voice dropped into your heart and you're grounded, then you're going to give off the right frequency that's actually going to be beneficial, to where the other person isn't going to get so angry and defend themselves, but they may listen because you're imparting like the right frequency to them, right? So it helped me a lot in my life, that if I really wanted to communicate with somebody, and especially if I had to communicate with them over something that was going to be like, a knockdown, drag out brawl, to really do my work, get my feet on the earth, get my heart really, emanating that Schumann earth frequency, getting my heart into a good rhythm, and then dropping my voice, into my heart, so that I am communicating a frequency. I'm not communicating words, that they pick up on the energy first, which will help to settle them down a little bit, while we're having this conversation. So we can design through our voice, depending on where we're at and what kind of frequency we're radiating and how that voice comes out, and change, the outcome. Like, it doesn't change what's going on in our outside world, but it actually creates an energy field that change may be available, and the relationships with other people may be more available. Now, there are people who are so misaligned that sometimes a positive frequency, or the Schumann frequency that's radiating in your body and your heart, and that your voice is connecting to, may really disturb as well, right? Because they're not there, and they don't want to be elevated, and they don't want to come into that field. And so they may get a little bit aggressive. So the challenge is always just to do your work the best that you can, and then provide that opportunity, for the world and others. And then you have to see how it's going to play out, but always trying to do your best. But anyway, so, when I try to talk to people, what I try to do is I try to do that. I try to get my voice aligned with my heart aligned with the Schumann frequency of the earth, and then try to get that voice out. I mean, sometimes I'm stressed out, it doesn't work, but I really try to do that because, as much as I can. So our voice can produce, the frequency of the heart, and the heart should be the Schumann frequency of the earth, because that's the best place that the heart is happiest.
Well, did you, the Schumann resonance, do you know how the name came about? Folks, it's 7.83 is, it's a theta.
But also not all planets are, the same.
To Schumann.
Right, they're all different.
Well, that must be why I believe that people come into our life resonating at different frequencies, and why the children of today talk about resonating. It's gotten to be, since the 80s, the language, the culture that I'm around. We have words while I was in the military, and I loved working with people because I learned teams, working with other people, because I'd always been law enforcement, criminal justice, but I went straight into owning my own private practice as an investigator. So I was always working alone. So when I went in the military, I loved working with other people. It was good for me because it was all about education and becoming a hospital corpsman. And of course, it was all medical field, but I got to work in the JAG office and do investigations. But I, of course, had to do findings of fact, and I did it for attorneys, like you said, you were an attorney-client. So I never heard of this Schumann resonance. So how did you learn about? This is amazing to me. But I understand in music offered me a lot of intelligence. But how did you find out about Schumann resonance in your lifetime? Was it in a book? Did someone teach it to you? You had a mentor, or did you just look up someday? What am I resonating? You said that woman taught you this Schumann resonance?
Well, yeah, I mean, it wasn't until I had a really good friend of mine who passed in May 2016, and she was the front of the gong bath, where people would go and they'd do a gong bath that would, cleanse your cellular memory and stuff like that, using gongs. And she had gone and studied with 3 of the top gong masters in the world. At one point, I did have Aiden, who I think is ranked 4th in the world for the gong master. He was on one of my TV shows that I had online.
Wow.
And he did like a whole piece. But she knew Aiden. She went. She was like a university professor, and then she decided when she retired that she wanted to get into sound healing. And so she traveled and studied and all of that. And so I really learned more about the Schumann frequency from her, because she was buying gongs that were tuned to different frequencies, like Venus, Mars, Earth, and they all had a different Schumann resonance, right? And so that's kind of like how I kind of learned about that. But before that, it was more about feeling, about mostly connecting with the earth, feeling that frequency, trying to get my heart regulated so it wasn't off rhythm so much, and I didn't have panic attacks by, connecting. And because you can't do it there, the thing is that I think they have books called Earthing now, where, they're actually putting people underground in dirt, and they teach people how to actually create a grounding wire into their living spaces that actually helps to ground your houses and inside. Because once you get off the dirt, once you have something between you and the dirt, then the heart can't send, signals down through the feet and pick up the reception of the frequency of the earth. So a lot of plastics, a lot of the shoes actually stop this from happening, right? Because shoes can take
insulation, right? Rubber.
Yeah. So
keep you from being lightning discharged, I guess.
Yeah. So, but the thing is that, I just started learning more and more about my voice and how, things went, and yeah. So
well,
all
you've
that.
done a lot of work on yourself. I guess that's amazing to me, because I also wrote a book called Life Coaching or something like that. Here it is. It says ACE. For ACE Metaphysical Institute, because I'm big into helping people. I come from that group growing up with all the Wayne Dyer and Earl Nightingale and Zig Ziglar, but it's ACE Life Coach, Basic Introduction, but it's just real simple of life coaching, but it's not in there. So when you get your book ready, your chapters, I hope you put in how you learned about the Schumann resonance and how it affects people at the various levels. People, my musician people, when they come on my radio show, they'll talk about levels in existence and the waves. And I like to talk in the neuro, but you're talking earth frequencies. So you're amazing. All the stuff that's amazing. So you got a radio show. Did you have to take a test with Revolution like I did? I had to talk by myself for like 2-hour show. Did you have to have a test like that to get on?
No, I had
you in.
No, I had a tough interview.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kidding.
Mine went pretty easy, but it was the managers. I think 5 out of it was Ahmed and Willow and Dreesen, and I think it was Patrick or some chat. It was Kat. I think Kat was a manager back then, but And Mad was there for that. That's when I met Mad. So he told me last night on the show, you were with me, that he was with me from the beginning. And I thought I'd done the show on Thursdays before, but I think he just had to work, so I had to plug in like you did. So you plugged in today to Studio A, right? You just got on Skype and plugged yourself in. And they just allow that, right? They turn you on, do something.
Well, yeah, I mean, you'll figure it out by Thursday, but it's super easy. It's
Okay.
it's a super easy thing to self-produce. I'm sure Janet has done it quite a bit.
I
So
did
sh-
at the beginning, but all
so
I
she'll
did
be a
was
pro.
No, she doesn't. She doesn't produce herself. She never learned it. So a monster produced her, and so that's why she has a Mad producer. That's why Mad is our producer. So he said they had to have a producer tuned in because he asked me since we have Studio B back up now, right? So we're a group, folks, and this is. Does everybody? Are we on? We're just on A and B right now, or is there someone on B right now? Do you know?
Yeah, there probably should be somebody on B as well. They usually operate together, and so yeah. So
With
there's
radio. Well, what did you tell people about me? Anything before I came on? Am I just a nobody?
Nope. I was just doing the opening.
Oh, okay. Well,
But you could tell people about you if you want.
Well, not sure what to
You want to
tell.
give them a past. Well, I mean, this is okay. So what you should do is kind of give them a background about the kind of things you're going to be talking about on the Porthole Stargate. So what are those conversations going to be like? So you were involved with like what, ET radio?
Oh, Portal Stargate. Oh, yeah.
And
I have TGMRCT
UFO.
radio.
I mean, you wrote UFO stuff. So, I mean, those are the kind of things you should tell people.
Oh, what I was.
Preparation for Portal Stargate.
Oh, well, yeah.
Just my thought.
Well, historically, I was an investigator, and I had died as a child, and it changed my life. And I remember going back in my brain and swimming around inside my brain, and I tried to tell later on. I didn't tell anybody about that. I didn't understand it. So being inside a body and trapped and being able to leave your body, I don't know if God or source or whatever meant everybody to do it, because apparently I wasn't allowed to talk about it. And that's when I learned to keep all myself inside and not to talk. And when I did, people would tell me not to talk about it. So I realized there was a way to discuss one experience. And I like to ask questions, but apparently I always ask the wrong questions. So how I became who I am and today to you and to radio is because I finally decided I was going to talk. And being an investigator in a career, I had children and husbands and husbands and children, and I was LDS in '72, Latter-day Saint. You mentioned Mormon, but I found that on my path after I died. I was looking, and I didn't find books about it because you don't learn about this in elementary, junior high, and high school. But I had uncles that worked in Los Alamos and then at NASA, and my husband worked at NASA. And I wanted to do about space. And I was telling my parents when Sputnik flew over in '57 about people that lived in space. And they just, I always got, people just would say, oh, you got a wild imagination, or isn't she cute? And my mother would shut me up, or my father would shut me up. So I wanted to talk about the larger cosmos from the time I was little, and I wasn't allowed to. So in junior high, I started teaching the 7th grade teacher about other planets and galaxies, and she told me to shut up and sent me to the principal's office. So I stopped in the 7th grade talking about the cosmos, and when she told me there was 9 planets, I said, no, ma'am, there's 12, and things like that, and we got an argument, but she had me stand up in front of the class and try to explain, and I was explaining it, but she just thought it was utter nonsense. Because I was only in the 7th grade, so it changed me. The few things that it seemed to be, I always got in trouble for talking or for saying things that to people you can't prove, you just know. So it wasn't, I was logical. I was always left brain logical. I made straight A's in math. I did average in English and history. I wrote my first book in the third grade, but I wasn't dumb. But personally, I just never could fit in. I mean, I did. I was very popular. I was pretty. I was blessed to have good looks, thank God, as a child, and But the thing was, nobody believed in me, but so I had to keep it sucked in and not talk about with anybody or any even educator about what I knew or what I wanted to know. And so these beings that were in my life that would come and go, I'm sure you've talked about your other family or those, in the universe, they don't just desert you, but they would come and visit. And they taught me things as a child, and then they would disappear. And then when I died that time, they came and picked me up. I fall on the ground after I had come back from hepatitis and was very weak and turned yellow, and just I couldn't even walk. So my parents finally, after they got me out of the hospital, I had a change of blood. They cleaned my blood, and I would have to sleep in a hammock outside because the doctors told me I needed earth and fresh air. Thank God. They were normal doctors at the hospital, but they told my mother I had to be outside to heal and to have fresh air. And because my liver had completely, turned me yellow, and I had to eat a lot of little calf liver and stuff. But anyway, this recreated me, even though I've always had this wonderment. And how do we come into our body and get trapped? And then I would still get sick, and I would retreat into behind my brain, and I was in prison. I would swim around inside my brain and see it. It's like being all in this lost pieces, just like the brain looks, worms, or it looks like these canals and everything attached. And I was trapped in there, and I felt trapped, and I couldn't come out of these places of entrapment inside the body, and you can't get out. So by the time I became well again, I had this interaction with these beings that they wouldn't tell me things. They just know things, but they would just be there for me. So I drowned after that once at the big city pool in Monroe, and I couldn't get to. They had extra. Sometimes they're huge, bigger than any. It's a public pool, had a fountain in the middle, and one of the cool things to do as a child would be to go out and make it when you get in the third and fourth grade, because I had died in the second. But to go out to the fountain and be with your friends out there underneath the spray. There's big spray would come out, but this was the big thing to prove you could swim. But it was so far out there that I couldn't make it, and they double filled the pool up to the top sometime, which is very rare because they usually have about a foot below the lip. But this time, sometimes it would just be overfull. It was one of these times. But anyway, I couldn't make it, and went under, and I know that I can't tell, I couldn't prove it to anybody, but this being or this hand pulled me up, and I was underwater, and I'd already given up because I had swum. I was so tired, and it saved me. So again, I believed in these beings because I couldn't see it, but I could feel it, and it pulled. I extended my right hand up, and of course I was below. It was probably 8 to 10 feet, but pulled me all the way up, and all by myself. And I mean, I could halfway swim, but anyway, saved me. So I've had these thoughts in my head of what are these beings, what are these experiences, and why does nobody talk about them? So I had all these things happening to me. So then when I went to White Sands and visited an uncle, I had willed myself there through, I didn't know I had an uncle in White Sands that worked there, but these beings are what I guess most humans would say it's your premonition, intuition, sixth sense, or attachment to the universe or whatever this energy is. It will guide you. And I'm sure people have felt like they were on automatic pilot when they drove a car or something, and they may get road hypnotized, and all of a sudden they're not there, and then all of a sudden they'll feel a feeling of bringing them back, or something drove the car for them. And later on in life, I'm a truck driver for 8 years, so I would have that happen a lot. So this energy, whatever it is important to me, but I wasn't allowed to talk about it. So I've been searching for, how do people communicate with each other, and are there other people like me? So the ET, UFO, cray-cray world, or woo-woo world that people thought wasn't real, was where I went into graduating from childhood experiences of being saved to going to White Sands and learning that there are extraterrestrials that come and go from this planet. And my uncle worked, but it was a deep secret. Then these two children that was my cousins with me were in White Sands. And I'm sort of mixing life together, folks, but I'm trying to give you my philosophy of how I got here. But the fact was, as a child, I was trying to put together a reality that didn't make any sense to me. I was here in physical form, and I was dying and coming back and meeting extraterrestrials in White Sands, New Mexico, and coming back, and people pulling me up from other worlds, but you couldn't see them. And then sometimes I'd have a manifestation of a UFO or a bubble orb person or a gold light or a big bright flashlight, and I just wasn't, I had no one to discuss it with. And my parents, oh, heaven forbid, I'd try to say something about a being, and mother, I don't believe in that. So she didn't believe in UFOs and all that. So it wasn't till I've had all these experiences. I die again. I have 4 children, and I died with my 4th child again and out of my body. And I go to the universe. And this time I went out. So it's experiences that teach my truth, as you call it, your truth. But when I went out dying in 74, my daughter's dead now. She just passed March 16th. But she came in knowing she was like you, Bridget, a star child. And she called it Gigi's moon. And she said she was out hanging stars when she was called into my body. And she was very honored to be my child in this life, and I miss her terribly. But she had a little bit of me as far as strangeness, and she never, ever fit in at all. And it was a blessing to have children, but the universe out there where I went when I died gave me the experience that there are various levels of existence, and it just confirmed what I already knew from the time I was a child, that is reality. It's real. There are other levels of who we are and what we are, and that it's up to each individual as a unit to learn to come and go as they so desire, or as they develop their abilities. And so it was the UFO field. And mainly, I learned to search for people in Aquarian Age bookstore near Rice University in Houston in my late 20s, early 30s, after my children were born and growing up in the Mormon church. I found that helped me somewhat, but it was around being with good people. That wasn't like the ones out west or had 10 wives and all that story. By the time I was in that church, it was LDS, Latter-day Saints, and they were just good people. They didn't drink, smoke, or drug, and I had to be around a clean atmosphere because my parents grew up where they smoked in my face in the house and drank. They were Baptists, but they were the kind that worked all day and thought weekends were for, having people over, smoking and drinking, playing cards, and then going to church on Sunday. That was just the atmosphere. No disrespect, but in the 50s, everybody in the block, we lived upper middle class, and they all did that. But it really made me sick because I'd had problems with hepatitis, but I couldn't stand to be around smoke or people drinking, or altering their personalities at all. So I had to be in a clean environment, and my children did. So that was good for me. But then I grew out of that, went into the metaphysical world. Now, people call that the New Age, but that's all. I didn't know that. I mean, I just knew that I went to a bookstore and I was trying to find anything to do with beings that weren't talked about, were hush-hush. So it was like living a secret life that I didn't want to live, but I didn't because I didn't talk about it. So I just started reading every book I could find. And it was John Gray's mother. He wrote Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. His mother ran that bookstore with her partner. And they took me to I didn't know anything about UFOs or MUFON, Mutual UFO Network. But around NASA, now this is on in the 80s and like late 20s, 30s. They took me to a NASA meeting, and we went all the way out to Clear Lake, Houston, out to NASA, and went up, parked, and we had to walk a long way for me and two older ladies, and walk up, and the lights on in the building, and open the glass door. And I had been around all over NASA, inside and out. I knew it like the back of my hand because my husband worked directly for NASA, and I had my clearance and all of that from having the 4 children with him and all that stuff. But he worked there, and so his father worked there for Grumman. He worked for NASA, and I was allowed to come and go. And so I knew the building, but we didn't get to have the meeting there. And the man said they had quit having the MUFON meeting. So that just made it even more curious. They've been building it up for a couple of weeks and telling me they were so excited to take me to my first MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, folks. And I didn't get to go. So that made it even more curious because NASA decided they couldn't have meetings there anymore. The first one, think about it. You're finally going to have somebody to talk about something, because they wouldn't talk about it because it was hush hush even in the store. It was you could read all these books in the Aquarian Age bookstore, but it wasn't Aquarian Age. It was Aquarian bookstore. I think it was Aquarian Age. Maybe, I don't know. I've forgotten already, but it's probably still there. I don't know. But I didn't get to go to that. And so that made me wonder about it. And I started listening to all these people. I knew that NASA that had been talking to me about, not all these people, I shouldn't say it like that because that makes it sound like a generality, like all the people were interested in me. No, there were a few engineers that my husband knew I was uniquely different, had death experiences, and I was psychic. So occasionally some of the engineers would have me come to their house where they'd have secret meetings. And one man had a whole library of books that were, I guess, esoteric, or I don't know what you'd call them, because later on in the bookstores they called it New Age, and I don't know why I got coined that, but esoteric books, theosophical possibly, but anyway, it was more to do with quantum and space and all of that. So that is how I started trying to pull in a reality that worked for NASA, going to space, my Sputnik story, my going to White Sands, meeting uncles that were engineers, that they all had classified secret levels. And I did that with these women. So these 2 women that owned a bookstore, and then John Gray becomes very famous. And I thought that was odd, that he was interesting and uniquely different. But I went on to have in Hawaii with the Navy. I traveled the world, of course, but I traveled that as an investigator, went to Africa and Europe and all that for multimillionaire attorneys that were in Houston that worked in the they were billionaires, okay, and they all worked and knew each other. I was in that. My husband played for Gerlach Entertainment Orchestra at night and worked at NASA during the day, but he had 5 scholarships. He was brilliant. He was my first high school sweetheart. We had 4 kids. So all of this is living a generic way that one is supposed to live, I guess, inside the bubble or inside the matrix. But inside, I very rarely was allowed to talk to anyone. So that's why some of the men in NASA were curious, because I had skills. One might call, I learned the word psychic, and I paid $75 at this Aquarian bookstore to get my chart, and they used the ephemeris and to put my chart and to teach me what I was Capricorn with Aquarius rising, and I learned what people called a zodiac type of chart, astrological chart. So that was an introduction to something strange, but I still didn't put it all together with the UFO stuff. So I go on and get in the Navy and go to Hawaii, and then I start I back up into the 80s. I get divorced, and I came back from Africa and traveling the world and doing investigations. So I'd been trained in arson, fraud, subrogation, and mainly did arson, fire, insurance company things, and then I worked with the FBI, and the intelligence community had decided to scoop me up, and 67 to 87 I was tested for my psychic abilities, but they had me reading polygraph and all that, and so I realized I was on paper from NASA clearances, and so I decided to go in uniform. I took the U.S. Treasury test, and I took defense language aptitude battery and all these different tests, and I passed and all of that. But it got me into a uniform, and that's when I learned about teams and working with Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and I got to wear all the uniforms. I was in a special program because they didn't understand why I wanted to go in, and I wasn't going to. They tried to keep me out. They didn't want me in uniform. I didn't realize that the government already had me as investigator contractor and recognized me that way. I didn't realize that because I just didn't know. I didn't know. They don't tell you these things. So it wasn't until I start looking for the UFOs inside the government that I start putting it together, and they send me to Hawaii, and I'm doing personnel information security and learning more about clearances and levels of intelligence that people are allowed to work with. And then I start going, aha. So there's levels of existence on the planet, and there's various levels of need to know. So I had to learn. I read the OpNav, SecNav, all these different books and manuals that people live by, especially in the government, and how they use clearances or those with a need to know. And I learned about spies and how certain people learned, but they may be anti whatever we were working on. So I learned about factions and separate groups of people, and why we protect information, and why it's only a need to know, not even if you have a clearance level, meaning they've done a background check on you. You have your entrance, national agency check, and then you have all the levels. Everybody has these, and the federal government, if you go out and get a job today, they have various levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, confidential, secret, top secret, above top secret, eyes only, crypto, and then all the clearance levels, and then you have numbers and you have names and all of that. Well, I was given a high clearance to work because of my investigative abilities, and then had nothing to do with UFOs. It wasn't until I get on a certain case, and my husband, I'm assigned to him, and he is working for President Reagan, and President Reagan wanted to know about UFOs. That's really, even though I'd been to White Sands and I had my own story, that I get to learn about the deeper levels of intelligence and working with UFOs. So are we about at a break?
We are. We're like 2 minutes from the break. So I'm just going to let people know that I'm Carrying Stone's Digging Holes radio show. We just completed the first hour. We're going to break. We're going to come back for the second hour. Today is my Saturday edition, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Studio A. And also, we need your support. We're making a big transition here at Revolution Radio. And we, are going to thrive in the future. So we want your support. Your support would mean a lot. It would really help us to make those transitions that we need to make. And so anyway, you're listening to TJ Morris or yes. Teresa J. Morris.
You did it. Thank you.
And so I'm sure you can look online. She's probably everywhere. So give us one of your websites that people can go look at.
tjmorrisagency.com or
okay.
teresajmorris.com.
Okay, and then also we're going to mute out because we just hit the promos, so we'll be back at 1 after. Be back. Thank you. Okay, everybody, we're going to try there. All right. This is Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. We're moving into the second hour. I'm your host, Bridget Lynn Dolgoff. Today's edition is Saturday, and it also is 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I also have a Wednesday edition, which is noon Eastern Standard Time to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, you can go to freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and hit the support us link and find ways to support us and support us through this transition. We're going to come out kicking and screaming. No, as we move forward, I'm really happy. I just want to give a shout out to our management. Willow and Monster and Am are super awesome, supportive people, and help everybody. So just really glad to have them as our faithful leaders of the chicken coop. We're like the chicken coop, I bet. All right. I have Teresa J. Morris on, and she was on the first hour, and she's going to be on the second hour. Excuse me, I just have a little thing in my throat. All right, Teresa, are you with us?
I'm here, believe it or not.
Hey, there's some pretty exciting thing that you're going to launch into at the end of the first hour, which is when your husband, when you really got into the UFO thing because your husband was involved with the Reagan administration?
We both were. Yeah, we were both in the government, and we were both investigators. And but he was my mission. I was given. They said the government had something they wanted me to do, and I had been told by a gentleman in the Pentagon that they would be in contact with me. It was all cloak and dagger, men in black, because all my life, even though I was always out trying to find answers secretively for myself, apparently the government was interested in me from the time I was 15 in in high school, and was with the Houston Spinnerets. So there's a second level of me that I didn't know about till I grew up and became this old lady, that I put it all together, that all these men in black that were around me all my life apparently were impressed with Yvonne McCutcheon's choice of women, and she put us together as the Houston Spinnerets. And I was in the newspaper back then. So apparently I'd gotten some notoriety for my looks. And at 15 years old, believe it or not, but they thought I was graduating high school. I was in the high 11th. I was always young, but anyway, yeah. So apparently my husband that worked at NASA had passed, and this is another husband. So Thomas Ray Morris, it was Sergeant Morris or Agent Morris for President Ronald Reagan. Reagan had UFO experiences, and he wanted to know the truth. So my husband had been in the Army at 20. He was a Kentucky guy. He was born in Lafayette in Tippecanoe County. That's cute to say. But a good person. He was born 5/16/59. He passed 12/2/2015. And I've lost a lot of people in life. It gives you more in-depth thinking about who you are, why you're here, where are we going when we leave this planet, right? But I should tell people I'm on this show, but I'll record it. But, we learn about ourselves. And he was 20 years old and took the pins out of the guns when we had President Carter in office. And they were negotiating the Iran-Contra affair. You're probably too young to remember that. You may not even been on the planet. No, you're only about 15, 18 years younger than me, right? I'm 60. You'll be 68 this year. But anyway, this is something that happened, and he had several schools, and he was a ranger and all these things you do in Army. They don't do that anymore. He helped change reality in the military because they had so many schools, but paratrooper and all kind of things. But he just got chosen. The universe chose him to be the guy that was taking the exchange for weapons for the hostages they had in Iran at the embassy. And while he was on the way over there, he took the pins out of the weapons, the guns, the rifles, or whatever. There was one guy flying the plane and then him in the back, but he just got chosen. There's only one guy. He was a new kid coming out of all these schools, and who knows how everything works. It just chance that he was chosen. But he decided to get involved on the hours, 18 hours or 20 hours, whatever it was, over to Iran from America, Georgia, New York, where they flew out of. I don't remember now. But this isn't written anywhere. I just know that since I'm talking reality and my truth, this is the story he gave me. But when he sat back there and had nothing to do, he decided they didn't. I don't know. He just made he made a conscious decision, a moral decision at 20 years old. New kid from all these schools and the military, and he was a real good shooter, but he was real poor. You know, shoot bear or not bear. What it was? Maybe he shot a bear. Deer. I'm visualizing deer saying deer or rabbit, but they were that poor out in the country. He had a really rough life. His dad was a minister, and that very seldom paid the church or the guy any money, maybe $25 a week or something to support his family. It's a sad story growing up. But anyway, where he gets his education is all this schooling in the Army and several schools. But he makes a conscious choice to take the pen. They can't shoot their weapons, make a long story short, without the pen in them. So I guess he hit them on the big belly planes. There's a big one of those big, huge planes. I don't know the name. I should, but I probably knew it 30 years ago. But they land, drop the belly. You know, you can picture a Schwarzenegger movie or some, I don't know, just some thing in a movie where they take the big pallets out of the back. But he said he had to exhibit that they worked, so he kept one that he could shoot and examine and showed them how it worked. And then he got back on and left. He left all the stuff, but he took the pins in the plane back with him. Well, that caused a whole bunch of controversy by the time they started loading them and all that. But he's gotten on the plane and they're headed back to the States. But by the time he gets back, apparently they told him that, you know, they wouldn't work. So it was a big, big thing inside, I guess, the part that we don't hear about in the government. But, you know, all the things that are classified for national security, all the stories that nobody ever hears going on in the world. There's a whole bunch of them we know about because most people don't care, don't have a need to know. Or if they do care, they still don't have a need to know. So all that goes on. Well, this is one of those stories. So the only reason I got to hear it was because I was his wife, and we were on this mission, UFO mission, and we'd get bored, or we'd drive truck around the country for 8 years together, and we'd talk. So that's how you get to know somebody, is talking. So he told me this story, and because I wanted to know, I wouldn't have heard this story if I hadn't said, "How did you get to know Reagan personally anyway?" So what happened is Reagan was fit to be tied over this because he was brand new in the office. You know, January 20th, they vote him in, blah, blah, blah. And they negotiated the deal, whether it was Republicans or Democrats. The donkey elephant game doesn't matter. They're all friends and they're all politicians, and they all negotiate world crisis and all that, you know, run the world for drugs and ammo, or drugs and weapons, or controversy to keep the world rotating with the world banking system and all of that, money, greed, you know, all that stuff. So that's all going on. And Reagan is like, what the, you know, what, I want to know this. Reagan personally wanted to know, when he heard what happened, bring this guy to me. Well, I guess he was going to crucify Tom for jacking with the Iran-Contra deal in the world and taking the pins out of the weapons once it was negotiated. And so Reagan brought him to the White House. You know, he literally went, and believe it or not, my husband told him exactly why he made the moral decision he did. And he was Army, and he was a new kid. He was 20. He was nice looking, you know. Back then he was built, he got real skinny. But Reagan had been former Army himself and liked Tom and made him Agent Morris, because at 20 years old, he just decided he wanted him to work directly for him after that, because they just talked for hours, and Reagan decided to like him. So that was the story he gave me. So he put him in the intelligence agency and called him Agent Morris. He was still Army, and he still went off and did his stuff with his groups, as we all do when we go into intelligence work. Like I was already a contractor investigator, and then I went and put a uniform on, but then I also worked as a civilian and a contractor. So you don't have to be one thing or the other, and that's where a lot of people in the government and in the military and mix it all together in the military industrial complex is just because you think you're one thing doesn't mean you can't do another. They mix and match it. Just like they play the donkey elephant game with Republican and Democrat. That doesn't mean they are one way or other. That means that's the role they're playing. That doesn't mean they don't go to lunch and talk how much money you're going to get and how much money you're going to get out of this. And let's earmark this money for this particular thing. And let's, because they're all negotiating in their own reality what is in it for them. That's just common sense. That's conscious effort. We say we're do-gooders. Well, Tom was a do-gooder. So he worked for President Reagan. President Reagan said, I want to know if these UFOs are real because I saw one. And Tom didn't believe in any of that stuff. He was a naysayer. He's 20 years old from Kentucky. All he'd ever done is try to survive off the land, literally kill animals in the snow in Kentucky. And believe me, I lived there 20 years with him as his wife, so I know how hard. He showed me all the strange little old junky farmhouses with all the little coal mining towns, and no disrespect to Kentucky, but I imagine it's around the whole United States when I was traveling. I just didn't go see and have this history behind his life, but he had a tough life, and it didn't make any sense to me because he was born in 59, I was born in 51, so we were 7.5 years apart legally, by the time you're born. But his life was so messed up as far as I was concerned, with having to kill animals to live and exist out in the snow so his family would have something to eat, or they'd kill a farmer's goat because they were like sharecropper people or lived off the land while his father was being a minister. But it's very sad. But here I was growing up in, Monroe, Louisiana, and dying and going out to willing myself to White Sands to meet uncles that worked at Los Alamos. And then I was in this Sputnik space cosmos thing of the Jetsons, watching the Jetsons on TV. Well, he didn't even have a TV to know what that life was about. So it's really odd that God, source, universe, God, whoever you want to call your creator in the beginning was, the theory of everything, however you put that together, whatever puts us all here, who, what, when, where, why, who knows? I don't have all the answers. Neither did he. So we would have these deep conferences with each other to entertain each other while we were driving coast to coast for these, looking for things. And Reagan wanted to know if there was any meat to that story. So that's how he got to meet Tom, and then sent Tom on this escapade. We were undercover. And of course, we had some gumshoe intelligence work, and we got trained in San Antonio, wherever how to be a spook. There's really schools out there to learn to be not visible, in person, where they look straight ahead, and be in their peripheral vision where they can't see you. There's a technique to all this spycraft. So you learn that stuff, Of course, I was already an investigator anyway. So they put, from what I understand, the gentleman that worked for the Pentagon, and I had already had intelligence work, remember, from my paperwork with NASA growing up and the government being interested in me, I got told that they had a mission for me. So he was assigned to me. That's how I learned about him. So that's how I learned about the story and how his UFO stories started meshing with my UFO stories, because I didn't have anybody. I didn't have anybody to talk about this stuff, and the government sure wouldn't talk to you about it. And there was all hush hush. And when I was working for attorneys and even in the government, if you mentioned something about anything strange, you'd get fired. I was told, if you want to work for us, keep your mouth shut, blah, blah, blah. So we signed government contracts to protect our country against both foreign and domestic, and we take it serious. We become patriots because we believe in family and flag and country. And boy, you don't mess with him and his red, white, and blue. And, these colors don't run. We take on oath of office, but we take it very seriously. And it's like I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. So we were brought up in a time when it was wonderful to be American. It was great to be a patriot. It was great to believe in the United States of America. And we were all about patriotism. So that's who we were. So we were off on a mission to find out who are these guys, or what is this UFO stuff we don't know about. We didn't know if it was good, bad, or indifferent. I had my own opinion because I died. So, and I didn't tell Tom about this stuff. He was very non-committal, unbiased. Well, a little bit, because he didn't believe in that stuff, because he was brought up in the country, and anybody, especially the less you know, the more protected you are from. It's like God. he was brought up with the Bible. The Bible is the way, the truth, the light. Okay, that's the way it is, and in a very religious community. And most people brought up, in America with the country and the Bible and the book. And some of them went to church and some didn't. In the 50s and 60s, it got sort of split up with the modern era and the TVs and all that. And cultures change. But we're out, and we get assigned separately. And so I do my thing, he does his thing, and when we come back together, we start comparing notes and scare each other, and we repel each other as man, woman. And they put us together for a reason. Then we find out later on in life, this would be really hard to put together for people, but we found out we were in Europe together, we were in Africa together. It's just I was older and with Navy, and he was younger with Army, and we both had some kind of I had met Reagan. I had met President Bush in Houston when I lived there, and with my first husband worked at NASA, or he would play with Gerlach Entertainment Agency, but they put me in these with the ultra wealthy of Houston, and these very expensive places where the people that make the difference with the money, the influencers with the money and that control the city and the oil and the industry and all that. I got to meet those type of people, go into these big things they would have to raise money and all that. And Tom had, with Reagan, would put him in those situations, and from 80 to 93, when he would have him come to Washington and, assign him something, a girl to dress him and put him in a limo and all that. So it was really interesting that we both had this ultra high level of understanding. That was who we were, but we were put into situations to observe and be about, and to meet certain people and find out what they, were they loyal to the government, so to speak. So we had that intel, and how we put it together is how we became husband and wife. Excuse me for a minute. But the books I've written were just articles I wrote for Canada. We went off and did this investigation and found out a lot of stuff, basically that it's real, and that, like, my mother never believed in it. She was very impressed when Stanton T. Friedman called me, but I was assigned to learn and observe as an investigator for the government as an independent contractor, but working ACIR. And this group put together between NASA and the government and advisory council, and I called it Assured Confidential Investigative Reports for ACIR. And the government and the men in black that would come and train. You just learn how to do things and to find out information. But they're always putting people together, and apparently there's a level that knows that all this is real. They know, and the military-industrial complex tries to keep their budgets together, and the White House, legislative, judicial, executive branch want to control their part, and you put it all together, and then you find out it's really some faction of those that run the world with all the empires and the money that's ever been back to Rome and the Catholic Church and the intelligence agency working together, and then all of that. So I've learned all these levels of intelligence or ways to think. But the UFO business became a reality established in movies and television and all that with books. And I'm now documenting for UFO Association what I've been able to extrapolate from others' experience in humans as intelligence, putting it together, because I would like to leave some intelligence behind, even though it sounds wacky doodle to people, because we were living in a time when my parents, after War of the World, is where they put the blame or the stigma in radio with Orson Welles doing War of the Worlds. back in the 1938, I think it was. Anyway, we're working on putting together a different reality for people that my family had, and Reagan knew that they existed because he had seen it. I can't explain. Once your mind opens up where the scotomas of your brain, sometimes we can't see things. And they said that about the Indians and people coming to this place and establishing this world. And they say the same thing about Columbus or whoever you want to believe, the different people, maybe the Nordics or the Norwegians, whoever you believe that came in through Canada but established America. They have to, you don't have any model to see it in your brain, anything to compare it to. And that's what the UFO field, the word unidentified flying object, UFO, offered me. Now, we use UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomena as well, UAP. But we've used many words. And back in the day when my mother and Stanton Friedman is one of the big names, and Stanton T. Friedman is one of the godfathers for getting it out there with Don Berliner. But Don Berliner worked at NICAP, NICAP. Before that was APRO, APRO. And before that they had CSI and there's all these groups of people that had experiences or had seen them, and they formed research groups and working with the government, and people may or may not know this. And then they couldn't ever get the appropriated funds to study this stuff because a lot of people either did or didn't believe in, or it was compartmentalized, so people weren't knowing, or enough people that knew the truth didn't want it out because they realized if there was something that the government could make money off of or control around the world, they didn't want the other parts of the world to have the control of the knowledge, and information became very valuable, and they learned that during the world wars. So we learned that these things were observing these people, and there's various levels and factions and existence of levels of intelligence. Now, whether you want to call them beings or spheres or orbs or Nordics or grays or extraterrestrials or I don't know, there's all these people that's I think it's folklore, a lot of it, reptilians and insectoids and all this stuff that's gotten to be in folklore, myth, legend, lore throughout this reality has really taken off in a total another direction. But the thing is, in this reality, and Bridget was talking about truth, is we were assigned to find out the truth, or at least the consensus of what we might think is findings of fact, of who, what, when, where, why, how many, how much sometimes, and how the consensus would be. So that would, the Reagan story, it's really deep, and I haven't really put the whole story together yet. Books and articles. I wrote articles for UFO Digester at Vanderplug. Robert Morningstar, that works here, was with me and Dirk way before we had Revolution Radio. And I feel like Mike Ringley of Kentucky and me being musicians and songwriters and stuff in Kentucky had a lot to do with Revolution forming. Mike gets all the credit, of course, but we were being shaped to do this. And that's the intelligence level that I don't talk about. But we were being shaped to have freedom of speech and get this stuff out. And that's where we're at with net neutrality and Revolution Radio now, is the fact that we were, Mike knew about a lot of things. He was very intelligent, and we did music. And I was looking for a bass player, and we were both in Kentucky, and we'd talk about, life and music, and I was working and making CDs and music and all that stuff. So Mike Ringley he called me because I was well known in the entertainment business, and had some work. I was working with internet IBMA and CMA, and I had
hey,
yeah.
It's me. I want to go back to, I have some questions about
of course.
UFO stuff.
Okay. Get up. You want me to go back to the, listen to you now. You act like you're interested, huh?
Well, no, I have some questions. So, well, because I am super ET. I've had a lot of experiences.
I had no idea.
So, okay, so when you were like out doing all this investigative work for UFO stuff, I just have some questions. So did you out of it believing in extraterrestrials or not believing in extraterrestrials?
Well, of course I believe in them, because remember, I died, and the people that pulled me up from the water. Now, see, I'm trying to find my own truth, right? Aren't we all here on the journey to find our own truth from our own experience?
Yep. So, yeah, we want your truth.
Yes. So with what we did is we compared notes, and he thought it was humans playing a trick on him. Let's just say for one of the incidences, because I can't go into the past 40 years of my life and what time's left, and I can't really write books enough because I've forgotten most of what. Believe it or not, that's human frailty. But to answer UFOs, yes, I believe extraterrestrials and unidentified flying objects. There are levels of people like us as the ones we worked with or saw. They were just higher levels of us. I didn't get to ask a lot of things, but I did learn a lot of things, and some things they wouldn't tell me. So it's very complicated. It's not like, oh, well, you went in and met these people, and yes, we worked underground, and yes, I went in and out of Vegas, and yes, I went to Area 51, and he did, and yes, sometimes we went and we saw the buses, and yeah, we verified everything anything that anybody knows out there, and Reagan found out, but they would sweep the bugs. Like right now in the White House where Trump is, you can hear everything from satellites, right? But back in that time before we had Star Wars and all that, I don't know how they did it, but I know that we had these little things and we would sweep for bugs. You know what I mean? Because we knew that the Russians all our buildings were pretty much bugged by the Russians, Chinese, whatever. It was a big thing they had from World War II. So I wasn't there putting the bugs in, but when part of my education with the government was to learn that when they would build the embassies in these different countries, they would build them with the bugs in them, and that's a known fact now. So Reagan was very aware that he was always being monitored by our government, after after the Nixon thing, right? But in our lore or in our history that we're putting together in the UFO business, we're doing our best to put a string or linear timelines, and different people are putting facts together. So yeah, I believe in it, and I'm doing my best to put together a new story that involves the things that, like Steven Spielberg did, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. When I went and saw that movie, my husband had to take me to the hospital because I stopped breathing, and I got too much, whatever it is, oxygen based. I had too much carbon dioxide because I stopped breathing or whatever. They had at least 5 people that went to the hospital right down the street from where I saw that in Houston, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So that affected me so bad because I'd had experiences with these beings. Now, what I did learn for myself, what my husband and I came to the conclusion of the beings that look like us, and there's a level of intelligence, and that there is part of our government, and every continent has a level of intelligence working with those off planet, are those that we from the heavens came, or the Anunnaki, if you want to say, or whomever is out there. It depends on the you separate people when you start talking about it, because each person learns words and what they mean, and then how they have an emotional connection in their nervous system, right?
Okay, so I have another question.
Go ahead.
Okay. Did you ever see a dead extraterrestrial or extraterrestrial in person in this reality?
Of course.
And were they, like you said, more human looking? Or not?
Well, the ones that I worked with were humans, and they had extraterrestrial. They had ESP. Some of them were really, really old, like myself, that knew about reincarnation coming and going, and that we exist. And then the ones that were hardest for me to accept were the little grays that I didn't know, because we were told the stories and then what we saw. And the grays that I saw up there where you live were some in person, in human form. Do you know where Flagstaff is outside of Sedona?
Yeah. Yep,
There
yep.
were all right. That's where I saw my ET, or whatever you want to call them, little grays. And, but I better shut up because it's going to really confuse people. But no, but if you ask me a question, I'll try to answer it.
Well, I was thinking about this story I had. So, I mean, I have my experiences. TJ has her experiences, and I love to hear her experiences. So, this was like about 5 years ago. I was working with a group of Native people who were taking back their land territory.
Yeah.
And also we're going to be, like creating their own bank and then building communities and having their own currencies based on, the money that was the resources under the land, like the gold and everything else like that. They could base their money on for the land
I
territories.
heard about
taking
this
back.
story. Tell us about
Well,
it.
there was actually a few of them. Well, I can't really get into it, but anyway, so I was involved. I was pulled in to kind of be in the future consultant to help build these communities, right, for people and all
Indians
the ideas.
Only?
Nope.
Native Americans
Everybody.
only? Or?
Would have been everybody.
Okay.
Anyway, so at one point, the woman who was kind of the head of that group had this woman call me that they were dealing with in their group, and I'm not sure exactly why she wanted me to meet with them. Probably because I was closer to them. I could meet with them, and then I could give the group a better idea of these people, meeting them in person, because that's how Native things are kind of done. It's more person to person kind of a thing. So anyway, I agreed to meet with them. And so the woman called me on the phone and she said, yeah, we're going to be doing a drive-by through Reno. Can we meet on this day at Whole Foods and we'll get something to eat and we'll, talk. And I have no idea what we're going to talk about. I have no idea really why I'm being involved or whatever else. But anyway, so I meet them at the Whole Foods. And there was some really trippy stuff that started happening right out the gate. We were sitting in the seats outside. It was nice outside. And there was this bird that kept landing in the one lady's hair, trying to literally make a nest and lay down like a wild bird. And she was really not paying attention to the whole thing. But I thought it was really interesting that you have to be fairly highly evolved for a bird. You know what I mean? A wild bird. To do that, not trying to irritate her, but trying to just really make a nest out of the top of her hair just so the bird could lay down and just take a little snooze.
Okay.
Well, anyway, so there was two ladies there. One told me that she was doing some work for the Bureau of International Settlement. And the other lady was there, and she was from the internal workings of the Pentagon. And I suspected that even though, it's a pretty far out story and event that happened, but I suspect that these people they are who they're saying they are, right? Because they were sent to me through other people to talk to them. Anyway, so we have this long conversation about all kinds of different law, and we're talking about stuff. They're feeling me out, watching me, and there's this point where the one lady from the Pentagon, she tells me that she's from the internal, and that what she's doing is she's working on, because after about 2 hours of talking, they finally really start to open up, right, about stuff. And so she was telling me that she's working on the internal part of the Pentagon. She studied with a woman how she got into the very center of it. She studied with a woman who was a shaman, who was had indigenous, but was really heavily trained in shamanism. And they used her as a weapon. So she became an assassin weapon for the government. And she could do things like explode people. You know what I mean?
Goodness.
Be able to send a signal. Anyway, so this is how this woman got in there. And she was kind of a CPA of the internal part of the Pentagon. She said nobody really knows about the inner layer, the third part. She called it the third level or something, where, all this stuff's going on. You've got the second outside level and then the third where most people see that one. And she was talking about how they were reworking I believe that they were at the backbone of changing the financial systems that are, also helping with other governments right now, the global reset.
Right.
Even though they
Yeah.
didn't talk about it at that time, but she said her job was to like conceive a new financial reality and then be able to write it, into documentation to actually create it. And it was some pretty really good stuff about how much money in the future will be going to the environment, to actually heal it and fix it and restore it. And just a lot of other priorities, like highly evolved priorities. Anyway, she started talking about how only 35% of the people who are in the center of the Pentagon where she's at are human. And then she started to say it's even crazier than that, because we have, people that we individually work with that come to us in a holographic image. And right about at that moment, we're sitting there, and there's this kind of you have to really look at it to see it. But like this holographic kind of window and image opened up of this guy. I could see him in his head. And she was talking about how her mentor, that person in that holographic image, he was like 1,500 years old, and he goes back and forth from this world to another, and that he shows up, to communicate with her in a holographic way. And I was like, and then I saw it on her right side, kind of below her arm. I saw the window open up, and I said, "Oh my God, I can see him. I know what he looks like."
Wow,
but it's
that's
such
good for you. Yeah, you had your
well,
mind open to scotoma. You have to. That's what I was trying to explain.
Going on.
Go ahead.
Like I love what David Icke says. He says what people think is going on and what is really going on don't even meet in the middle. That they're two totally far away from each other realities. And so nowadays it's more and more normal that you can talk about events like that, and you'll have people that'll actually listen.
Yeah.
But in the old days, you would never talk about something like that publicly.
Right. Well, that's been the problem for me, is the disgruntled monk on the inside, the introvert that, has this outgoing ability, extrovert. I was trained to get people like me, but I was outgoing. I was a majorette and a cheerleader and all that stuff, like Bush, you're trained in that popularity thing to get people like you, because you don't want to go around having people not like you. But inside, I was like a nerd, Big Bang Theory kind of person. I was all about quantum physics and all that, because I wanted to know about the bigger picture, the macrocosm. I wasn't into the details. I'm still not. I've run corporations. I've run huge things, nonprofits and profit. But the thing is, I can see the big picture. And so I was called the CEO or visionary, right? People could get. But doing the details, I'd get people. I'd hire CPA. I'd hire attorneys. I'd hire investigators, whatever. But, in the beginning, I had to learn how to do it for myself and define my own reality. And it may or may not match everybody's, but I learned to go from each level of existence. That's what the government and all these rich people offered me, is if we have gifts, or why are we chosen? So that's where people like Janet started. She came to one of my, I was a creator, a manifester, and I was motivational tracking my stuff with Wayne Dyer. He and I went to Mensa meetings in Maui or on the Big Island or on Oahu. But anyway, I was a big Wayne Dyer fan, so listened to his tapes and all that stuff. I went to Psi seminars, people synergistically involved. But she came to Spiritual World Center, your Spiritual World Network. I was in several spiritual groups. I'd been on a lot of radio shows in Hawaii, so I'd gotten a lot of attention because the government didn't like it. But I was being outspoken because I was on my spiritual journey. It just happened to be I had already decided I wanted to wear a uniform, and then I was working for the government, and I was in personnel information security, and I was doing all these things as a reservist, active duty, contractor, GS. It confused people, but it was all the government was like, what the heck's going on? And the Men in Black would come and watch me do psychic readings at the malls or have these big things. So she came and got involved with me in Project Stargate, which was already over by the time she got in it. But that's Russell Targ and what the government, Stanford Institute, what is it called over there where you are? SRI, maybe Stanford Research Institute. Anyway, they were doing this stuff with the government, and you've heard about all that stuff, but they try to put it all together, and it goes together in layers, but it doesn't, it depends on each person where they were they there, finding a fact, meaning where were you at what time and when did this experience happen, and you look at the linear timelines, and the history people want to keep it on a historical timeline to prove this or that or the other. Now you have the level of the sixth sense or the shaman. Now the government always had paranormal desk, and like you said, dealing with this woman that was working with this shaman, we know that the reality is we keep a fake news, a fake fundamental, a fake matrix, a consensus of how we want the world to evolve so we can organize it. The intelligence world can keep it under control. That's all over the planet. But you're right. There are people on all the planet continents that all rule their empires. It's still the old school of hierarchy, off planet on. There's a reason for that. And what I understand, it's levels of intelligence and level of experience. And some do want to keep us dumbed down. I was into that. I was learning, why are people not talking? And why is there a consensus of how the energy works? So like you said, the Schumann resonance, right, and the grid. So I wanted to learn everything in the cosmos, everything above that. So there weren't that many people out there. So the only ones I could find were nerds or NASA engineers or physicists, scientists, and even the medical doctors. Now, I did work with some Nordics while my daughter was dying because she had a very alien, she acquired benzene poisoning, breathing while she was painting. And she was cleared by the FBI to do some buildings and paint. But she's dead now. But I wanted to keep her alive. But she told me she was here, and so did Tom. One of their missions at a soul level was to help cure cancer, because I can't talk about the medical stuff too much because you know how people get in trouble. It's the fact that we have things that are controlled because of pharmaceutical, medical, how much they allow people to use at certain times. And so I would think we're all under a control factor of various levels of existence, factions. And the more you know, information is the currency of the universe. I don't know any better way to say that. It doesn't matter whether it's dollars, bitcoins, sticks, Indian beads. You know, you trade and barter for whatever you need in life. But energy is the exchange, and information is the currency, or you barter for information based on the energy you need to thrive, not just survive. And so that's how I do my best, Bridget, to stay out of the universal whole. But the governments around the world learned that it was always like the Dogon in the Egyptians and the Anunnaki, those off, Anu, that the ancient, they were trying to destroy, because those that are in the physical reality, there's two sides, and we all have our light and dark. You know about the dark night of the soul. We all have a shadow. And in most of the world religions, they learned and taught in our reincarnation process, coming over and over again, that whatever we had in consensus is how we would accept ourselves. India keeps a certain energy alive over there in India, and you know what I'm saying, the Buddhists have their thing. But it's all above the religions. It's above the world banks. It's above all that. So you always have to take it above all that to understand your reality. So you've got to open your mind to accept that all things are possible. And when you do that, you start developing higher levels of your own existence. And that's what my group, Ace Life Coach, my coaches, and that's why I was welcoming you into our ACO Association. And if you're into the ET stuff, the UFO Association, I'm doing my best to try to keep history alive for those that will eventually want to find it in their journey. You can't, my mother, who was it, said you know this saying, you can sort of lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. You know what I'm saying? That's the existence that I've grown up in. I don't know. My horse wanted to talk. I was like Mr. Ed. So I try to find humor in the fact that I want to know more. And yet I want to help people that want it. But you can't cast pearls before swine. That's where a lot of the religions came from, is who deserves to know. that's how we got the esoteric levels, the occult wisdom. It's not evil. It's who wants the wisdom of Solomon, and where did Solomon get that wisdom? Who were those extraterrestrials or gods or el gods or whatever you want to call them that gave him that knowledge and bestowed it to him? And at 12 years old, he knew more than anything, but he asked for the wrong things. Of course, he wound up with 1,000 wives and breaking the codes of the normal census that humans had come up together. So with you and me, we're the beginning. I don't know if you're the bee and I'm the flower. Or if I, you know what I'm saying? I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg. But what we're doing here at Revolution is offering people a space and place on their journey, and hopefully not just to survive but thrive. But Mike was all about preppers and preparing for his way was helping people get better. And he was very intelligent on the psychic level. And Ahmed teaches me that more and more every day. So that's why he wants to keep this going, and why the people, I believe, like Lady Horse were drawn to him, and Kat and Patrick. And is it Mr. Rewer, the guy in Louisiana? Do you know him?
I think it's Roe.
Roe, that's it.
Roe.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know if I've talked to him or he's been on my show in the past or not. I remember a guy from Louisiana. But the people that I've seen here, they're all nice. They're humble. They have good spirits. They understand how to work together as volunteers. And they don't really ask
we can fight like children.
Well, that's human nature.
Sometimes we get in some big old bedroom or kitchen brawls. Yeah, I've been in a few. Knock down, drag out myself on the our chat. It just sometimes it happens.
You think they think I'm too strange for that, or I just?
Oh no, we have a lot of strange on Revolution Radio.
Okay. Well,
strange.
I got started in the beginning before it was even a real reality, and that's what I like. I'm one of those people that seems to be, the universe will call me into a position of knowing people, but I turned Mike down at least 3 times that I can recall, and I still wound up working over on Revolution with him. But I never got to go. I wanted to go over to his party. I was invited twice, but I didn't get to make it. So Ahmed is the closest thing. And now Mike got real mad at me once because I brought a guy on that was mentioning Crawley inside the pyramid, but he didn't hear the whole thing. He tuned in and cussed me out. And then Ahmed had to tell him that wasn't right. That's not what we were talking about. We weren't about evil stuff or dark magic or any of that. So, but he was very aware there's light and dark, right? There's in everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we have to remember.
And he had a lot of integrity because he didn't let, anyone infiltrate or try to partner up with the network so that they could, control it and control the content. I mean, that's one thing, even though people would get mad about certain guests sometimes, I mean, the main thing was, about truth and having integrity, I think, from, Mike's standpoint. And I really believe that he was really trying, like you said, finding out ways that he could heal the world, help.
Yeah, he was a helper.
Great thing.
I want to believe that. And that's what I did learn, because when I talked to him, I know he'd cuss me out and stuff, but he had known me before as a musician and a soul person, a good person in Kentucky.
So we have 2 minutes. My show goes by really, really fast.
Well, maybe it does. So maybe we can do this again, but I hope you'll come back on my show. And you are coming November 7th on Portal Stargate, remember?
Yeah. So what's so tell people your website, AOC something.
Oh, ACO Association. ACO is call sign, call letters. So if you can't find me, ACO Association is one. We have UFO Association is another. We work together with Janet with the Ascension Center Network in Hawaii, where I started my psychic stuff. And we had big psychic stuff, and now we have them here in Gulf Breeze, big events, conventions with psychics and people. I'm working with Erica Busserhain here, where my daughter works at the Navarre Conference Center. So when you're coming through the Panhandle of Florida, please look us up. And you'll be able to find me at TJ Mars ET Radio is the name I'm known for this UFO stuff and talking about stuff I found out. So
awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, so you're going to help us though, but we appreciate it, and we'll Revolution will hope to keep intact, and we have a lot of players we're going to put up on some other websites, but they're trying to get me not to spend so much money out of my pocket because I spend thousands a year doing this stuff. So
all right. So anyway, we're getting ready for the final 30 seconds, and you're listening to Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Please go there and find the donate button and help us to make this transition. And we would really, really appreciate it. And I've been your hostess with maybe not the mostest, Bridget Lynn Dolgoff. And we'll see you on Wednesday. Thanks, everybody. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.